Welcome to the alignment. This is the fourth episode. We're going to be talking today about turning up the local user volume. That means using all kinds of data, qualitative, quantitative, in our product process, in our marketing, in our software business to help make our product experiences as well attuned for our global audiences as we possibly can. Just before we begin, I have the duty of telling you just a little bit about Global App Testing, who we are and why we're doing this. If you've not heard of Global App Testing before, who's in the name? We do QA via crowd testing around the world. We've got testers in 190 countries and territories, and they are sat waiting and ready to test different bits of software. The reason that we're doing this is because over the last few years, what we've noticed is that our most exciting work isn't necessarily in the realm of strict QA, but is from this idea of globalization data and data that helps our biggest clients expand their user bases around the world by providing them information that is up to date about their global product experiences. So we're just doing this to introduce ourselves to this new group of people, to say, hi, we exist. And if you do want to talk to us a little bit more about Global App Testing or our services, we're available to do so, and we can talk to you anytime. So that brings me to the format of the alignment for anybody who has not been here before. Obviously, we're going to share with you a little bit about what we know, but we want to hear loads from you about what you know as well, which is why this is a really discursive kind of webinar. The way that it works is that each of the panelists is going to be talking a little bit about a subtopic related to the major theme. Throughout, I hope that I can induce you to ask loads of questions. If you want to ask questions, you can use the Q&A function in the chat. It's like a little speech bubble chat thing. It's easy enough to click and use. If you ask a question, we do try and prioritize those, so we will get back to you. We would love for you to ask questions throughout, and all of our speakers are ready to answer. Today, we have an amazing group of people speaking. So just to go through them quickly, Horatio is a senior localization project manager at Global App Testing. He's had various operations and sales roles with us. That means that he helps some of the biggest apps in the world in their localization practices. He's going to be telling us 3 lessons from the global data front line. Miguel is the globalization director of King Games. I know King much better as Candy Crush, to which I was once addicted. I've slowly weaned myself off of it. It has 273 million active users. On the side, Miguel runs the famous Yo Localizo blog, which you should definitely check out. It's loads of really interesting stuff on the topic of localization there. He's going to be talking a little bit about how data can unlock buy-in from the C-suite. Obviously, selling localization is such a huge part of the job. Rieko is the lead localization project manager at Slack. She's been at Slack for 6 years. She joined as a localization project manager. Her biggest project has been taking Slack in Japan. We are going to hear a little bit more about the data mix that informs Slack's local product decisions. Carrie is the manager of globalization services at Subway. She's over 30 years of localization experience, including in Oracle and transparent language. She's also the president of Women in Localization. Subway, I understand, are in the middle of launching their rewards program. So we're really excited to hear about how local user voices have helped define that. Finally, last but not least, Hilla is the CMO at Blend. If you're not familiar with Blend, they provide translation and localization services to some of the world's largest businesses. So that's all of our speakers. I feel like I've been talking for about 100 years. So I'm going to hand straight over to Horatio and get off of the microphone. Horatio, straight over to you.
Thank you very much, Adam. Hello, everyone. I'm Horatio. I'm a project manager at Global App Testing, and part of my job also cover helping our clients to get localization QA and globalization data that can help them create a successful product. So I think that the other panelists will be talking about why local voices are super important. So I will try to talk from my experience about the how. Now, as Adam said, I will share with you 3 lessons. First one being called data needs a job and a job needs data. So one of the biggest challenges and issues I've heard from my clients is that you can collect data, but it doesn't find a job. This means that nothing happens after collecting it, or nobody cares about it. So one of the things I've learned here at Get is that sometimes everything starts from the wrong place. Instead of starting with what information you can share with internal teams, you should probably start with what information would help internal teams make decisions. Now, how we solve this at Global App Testing? With better and deeper listening. We target testers based on issues priority from our clients, and we try to deliver suggestions and data that can have the biggest impact on the product. So if you are basically involved in data collection or you love to hear from local users, never forget that client mindset and think about their decision points and workflows, because it will ensure your research gets used by them. My second lesson today is called "Some data is better than slow data." So if you are not familiar with what we are doing here at Global App Testing and with our services, we are basically not a traditional user research company, and we do not often do things like panels or focus groups. What we actually do here is we allow you to get UX or LQA or functional feedback within 48 hours. As an example, we can target any country in the world or any device, and you can get feedback super quickly. Our clients basically value this because it's faster compared with what they can do in-house, or how quickly they can receive feedback from the local users. Basically, our professional testers make complex and clear points, and they match all the agreed requirements with everything that they are delivering. So the value of faster data is that it can support an iterative approach, which we believe is it's a much better way to do product. When you are thinking about clients, just think about how fast they need the data they are using day by day. This will lead me to the final point today, to the third lesson, which is called "You can keep going if you iterate." And to start with is basically, in general, businesses don't go far enough with localization. And from my experience, I think an iterative data approach supports further localization. So my final 2 minutes will go to explain you what I mean with the U-shape, which is available now on the screen. So often there are two ways of businesses and product processes. They either work forward through a need case or backwards from a commercial problem when they suggest a localized change to their product. So to give you some examples for the above things that I've told you, the product needs to be translated in French, as an example. This is a need case. Or as a commercial issue, they might ask why our signups are so low in French markets. So both of these are brilliant ideas and great things to cover, but solving them, it's quite a big investment in time, and it's a lot of figuring stuff out. So I think that simple changes and improvements should appear where the time investment is low, basically at the bottom of the U, and you can make gradual improvement, which isn't visible in all your metrics. And to give you some simple examples that confirms this, things like keyboard layouts, let's say, tend to annoy users but be invisible, or assumptions that forms make about users in onboarding flows, or even moving a little bit to the culture-oriented things, matching the photos with the personas a bit better in some specific sections and flows. So to recap, my 3 lessons today presented are: give your data a job, really important, get some data quickly in order that you can iterate, and you should iterate to make your experience better for all your use. Thank you for listening. That was me. So back to you, Adam.
Thank you so much. So I can see that no one's asked a question yet, but if I can employ you to do so, I'm going to be asking you throughout to ask our speakers questions, but I'm also going to be turning it back on you just now because it is time to launch a poll. So if we can have the poll launched. So this is a question. Obviously, Horatio was talking a little bit about data not getting used, that first lesson. I'm just going to read it out because I know people watching after this can't see it. So how far do you agree with the following statement? When we gather learnings about local users, they get used by the business. So is it that the data collection you do is successfully finding its way into your product reflection, into your marketing, or is it that the business does not use it and your data is unemployed? I'm going to leave the poll open while our next speaker talks, and then I will close it and we can reveal the results at the end. Over to you, Miguel.
Okay, hola a todos. Thanks, Alan, for the introduction. I am happy to be here representing the globalization team at Kin, where I have the pleasure of leading a team that ensures that all people around the world can enjoy a pleasant player experience in which the content is adapted to the language and culture. And as Alan mentioned at the beginning, our most popular game is Candy Crush, but in fact, our company's game portfolio includes other very few popular casual games such as Farm Hero, Babel Witch, or Pet Rescue, to name a few. And our games are available in multiple languages, depending on the specific game. So yeah, they are very entertaining and fun to play. If you have some time, don't hesitate to go and download them and have some fun. Okay, so enough of me, and let's talk about data and how to approach the C-suite when it comes to show the value that a localization team brings. And before going any further when it comes to metrics, I like to make a distinction between operational KPIs and strategic KPIs. Because operational KPIs are the usual suspects that localization teams use to assess the efficiency of their processes or quality management. And here we often have project management metrics, financial metrics, quality metrics. All these metrics are crucial and they help us evaluate the efficiency of our localization strategy. So we need them. However, it's important to note that these metrics don't fully explain the added value of localization. So these are not the best metrics to show the product leadership team if we want to communicate the localization impact. For instance, in project management KPIs, we might track metrics like, I don't know, on-time delivery from our language partners, turnaround time, what else? Total words per content type. But these metrics don't really provide insights into the impact of localization. They help me to understand if I am late or on time for a project. They help me assess the volume I'm managing, so they are helpful, but they are not really saying anything about how we are contributing to product growth. The same might happen with other metrics, quality metrics, where we typically track things like, I don't know, number of linguistic errors or internationalization issues or truncations, just to mention some of the usual categories. So while these metrics are essential for improving internal processes and monitoring the quality delivered by our language service provider, senior management often doesn't place a high emphasis on them. A dashboard displaying metrics related to linguistic errors or on-time delivery percentage may not be as useful to senior management as we'd like to believe, because they don't reveal the true impact of our work. So to identify impactful metrics and understand the added value of localization, we need to shift our mindset. Localization teams tend to focus on quality, while senior management prioritize value. So we need to move forward and move towards demonstrating growth, which is the key to effectively communicating our team value to senior management. Those are metrics that we track and report to leadership. Growth metrics where localizations are contributing. So to be more specific, some metrics that fall under this category and that can help explain the added value of localization are, for example, the average revenue per user per locale, or customer retention rates per market, or monthly and daily active users by country. These metrics demonstrate how localization activities contribute to the product team's goal and the company overall objectives. If you think about when we report the number of linguistic bags, it doesn't provide insights into our contribution to global growth. However, conducting an A/B test with a localized campaign and comparing, for example, engagement, retention, and purchases metrics between English-speaking and localization user groups can provide very insightful data about localization and the impact. And this sends a very different message to senior leadership. So as a general rule, metrics related to the added value of localization are often linked to user experience. In my opinion, measuring localization success has traditionally focused on operational performance rather than how that performance impact business outcome and create values. So now, once we have identified the right metrics, the other two elements that we need to consider are the tools and how we will communicate them. And for tools, there are several options available in the market. So I don't know, Tableau, Looker, Google Analytics, there are many. And ideally, you should use the same tools as your company data team, as it facilitates access to dashboards and data maintenance. And then in terms of communication channels here, what we try to do is to use as many channels as possible. Sometimes I'm joking when I say that we need to do often localization impact propaganda. But here the idea is to find some tactics that it allows us to show those metrics we've been collecting. So in that regards, quarterly business reviews, QBRs meetings with stakeholders is one of my favorite tactics. So explaining to the Keynes the Game teams the activities of the previous quarter, what we've been doing. Also, we talk about what we are going to do in the next quarter. These meetings provide an excellent opportunity to present metrics and engage in open discussions about our work. Newsletters are another effective communication channel to showcase the work and the impact. In the past, we've also launched and do pizza lunch sessions to invite the stakeholders to launch our lunch sessions. Additionally, onboarding session for new employees. So we try to use as many channels as we can. And finally, in terms of communication, I found very helpful to have an elevator pitch of what we do in the team, which is basically a small speech following this elevator pitch idea that explains what we do, how we do it, and more importantly, why that's important. So I believe I'm summarizing the key takeaways of all this I'm sharing with you is to focus on metrics that matter, metrics that connect to growth and user experience.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Miguel. I'm going to end the poll now. We're going to reveal who said what at the end when we come to the questions. But now I am going to pass over to Rico. I'm so excited to hear about how the Japanese launch was informed by local user voices. Over to you, Rico.
Thank you, Adam. Hi, I'm Rieko. I'm lead localization project manager at Slack. So this webinar theme is how to apply global users' voice for product development. And I have a good story to share today. It's our user research trip to Japan back in 2017. It was 6 months before the launch of Slack Japanese version. Internationalization is a Slack top priority always, but what pushed us to take a trip to Japan? Next slide, please. We were localizing Slack to French, German, Japanese, and Spanish. Among those languages, the Japanese market was such a mystery for many members at Slack. But Japan was a very important market for Slack back then because we had a huge user base in Japan, even though the app wasn't localized yet. So to enter the Japanese market in the best way possible, there was a strong need to understand the Japanese company culture, their work style, how they use tools and the office, yada, yada, yada. Most specifically, for the product team, they were trying to figure out if there were any risks with our current product and service. For marketing team, they wanted to understand what would be a good marketing approach. And for me, the localization team, I wanted to find the right voice and tone for Slack in Japanese. So now I'm a lead project manager in the localization team, but I actually joined Slack as a Japanese translator in 2016. That's when the localization team was just created. Slack had a very unique, friendly voice and tone, and that was loved by American users because it was different from other softwares back then. So when I joined, I had to establish the Japanese voice and tone, which still keeps the original Slack friendliness, but appropriate to Japanese users. Based on the data of the users in Japan, such as industry and age, I established the Japanese voice and tone. So in Japanese, there are different politeness levels, and I worked hard to spot the right level of politeness, which still carries out the Slack friendliness, but not rude. I need to verify if that is really the right approach for Japanese users. So the members from the product team, the marketing team, and the research team, and me from the localization team packed our laptops and went to Japan. We visited offices of Japanese companies. We conducted a focus group interviews with 4 different types of stakeholders, and we had a follow-up face-to-face user interviews after the focus group. The trip was so insightful, and the report is actually huge. And I don't have time to share all the findings today, so I will share some highlights. Next slide, please. For the marketing teams, they confirmed it was the right time to enter the Japanese market because in Japan, at that time, there was a large work style reform movement happening. Companies had a need for introducing new tools. At the same time, we found that there were marketing challenges due to traditional Japanese work ethic. This helped them to form the go-to-market strategy. And for the product team, we got a couple of interesting feature requests. And we, after all, introduced a special setting to send messages that's specific to Japanese. We heard the request for this option during user research, and the product team investigated further later, and it was introduced at Japanese launch. And for me, I verified the politeness level I said was working, big yes moment. But there were some new findings, and I applied those later. One of the more interesting ones is that when the text is 100% translated into Japanese and there's no English words at all, users said that it didn't feel native and natural. In Japan, some words stays in English, especially in software. When those are translated, they feel it's rather translated text. So I became more careful on checking if the word is common in English or translated, and left more terms in English intentionally. So that was our user research trip. We learned many unexpected things by simply talking and listening to the users. And this was extremely valuable to provide a better user experience in the end. Well, some of you are probably thinking, we cannot get the budget to take a trip abroad easily. You don't need to. Our team has also done user interviews online. Now, we have tools and services to make it possible. So we can totally do it without traveling to the place. But, you know, the sushi is better in Tokyo. So I'm so glad I could go to Japan. Anyway, I hope this was helpful, and back to you, Adam.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rieko. I can see that somebody's asked a question. Thank you so much. We are going to get to it. But if you have questions for Rieko, do put them in the chat. Don't leave me with my own questions today. I'm going to pass over now to Carrie, who's got a similar case study. She's going to be talking about the rewards program that Subway has recently rolled out with relation to local user voices. Over to you, Carrie.
Thank you. And I agree, the sushi is better in Japan. Speaking of food, So being in the restaurant industry, when COVID hit, Subway had to pivot rather quickly to the digital space. We did have an app and we had the ability for guests to order from the website, but it was not a consistent experience. It really forced us to take a hard look at the guest experience, which included a rewards program. And you would think that the largest QSR, which stands for quick service restaurant, fast food chain in easy speak, we're the largest QSR in the world, and you would think that we would have it more together. But Subway as a company worked rather independently. So EMEA did their own thing, APAC did their own thing. And this goes beyond the different menus, which we will always have. What I mean here is the Subway app in EMEA looked very different from the app in North America. We used to contract out the development of the app, which included loyalty programs, which I believe was even a separate company than the company that was developing the app. It just got very complex. And I remember trying to reach out to these firms and asking, hey, do you want my glossaries? Do you want my TMs so our terminology can be consistent across the board? And it just didn't happen. Nobody got back to me, and it was a complete disconnect. So a few years ago, we really made a concerted effort to have a consistent, good guest experience, which meant taking back the responsibility of the app in-house within Subway. It also included creating a new loyalty program, which at the time we called Subway My Way Rewards, a very North American play on words with Subway and My Way. The challenge immediately became, how do we translate this into French Canadian? Because they're part of North America. So we looked to our franchisees in Quebec. We hired a local agency, and we used MyLinguist to come up with what finally became Mon Subway Récompense, My Subway Rewards. We didn't really do that with any of the other markets outside of North America. They decided to keep the My Way phrasing. So fast forward to last week, when we launched our new rewards program called Subway MVP Rewards. I felt like we didn't really learn anything from our last experience because, once again, MVP is a very North American concept, meaning most valuable player, referring to a game. Baseball comes to mind immediately, but they have it in basketball and every other sport. They did change it to most valuable person, which still didn't really make any sense outside of North America. And our levels within our loyalty program are now Pro, Captain, and All-Star. Depending on how much Subway you buy in a year, you're moved up in our ranking system. However, what I saw was immediate buy-in from the different markets. They wanted to be aligned with our strategy in North America, but adapt it slightly to fit each market appropriately. For example, in Quebec, we renamed the program Étoile Récompense Subway. So basically Subway Star Rewards. And the three levels became Pro, same, Capitaine, same, and Légende. In Finland, we simply renamed it to Subway Rewards. There was no MVP, in that thinking process. And everybody was on board with the rewards program, although they did rename the levels. So in Finland, our levels became Rising Star, Hot Shot, and The Boss. So, but because everyone was on board with that new program, it allowed us to reuse a lot of the essential documents like the FAQs and the job aids and the e-learning materials. At the same time, they did listen to their local market feedback and came up with what made sense to their target markets. And I think the more important part of this is the rewards program looks exactly the same, really, across the markets where we offer the app. So far we've launched the app in Puerto Rico. So we did Puerto Rican Spanish, North America. So we did French Canadian, and Finland for whatever reason. So we translated that into Finnish. And our next markets include France and Germany. And I'm really looking forward to see what the local voices in those markets name our rewards program and our different levels of loyalty. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carrie. We've had such a diverse set of different ways that data and local user voices inform product process. Super interesting. So I'd like to introduce you now to Hilla Shitrit. Hilla is the Chief Marketing Officer at Blend. Blend is an LSP. They provide localization and translation to major businesses around the world. Hi, Hilla. I have a few questions for Hilla, and I'm going to dive right into one of them. Hilla, we've heard loads about guaranteeing the success of localization and using data to assess it. I wonder when you are providing translation services, how do you assess the success of that?
So first of all, hi everyone. Thanks for inviting me, Adam. So assessing the success of translation is, a very challenging task, I would say. It's also very subjective. So I have to say that we rely on our clients and customers to help us and provide us with feedback from the market, from their users. We are talking here about the voice of the users. At Blend, we are using lots of technologies, but also a very large community of translators and language experts and voice actors to do the work of localization. And these people are usually local in-market, native speakers, certified translators, professionals with lots of experience and high ranking. And we make sure to use the best talent that is available and out there to do the job. And we are also all the time QAing and sending samples for QA and for second linguist review and editing. So we make sure that not one professional is going through the content, but even two. But I think the most important part is the feedback from the clients, and this is helping us to learn and improve over time. So the ongoing process, the ongoing relationship is really helping us improve over time.
You mentioned there local in-market translators. I wonder how important do you think that is? How do you identify a translator is an appropriate person to be doing a translation and can really be attuned to the pulse of a local market, so to speak?
I think it's super important. We heard all the speakers before me, these localization experts that are here. It's very, very important to make sure that the content is as native as possible, with all the cultural nuances and the small little style issues and everything should feel as native as possible, even though Rieko said some people prefer to keep some words in English to feel native, but I think it's very, very important that if you are entering a new market, the people that are helping you speak or become native are from the market and familiar with all the language, even phrases and humor sometime, and you need to have all this in your content. So it's I believe it's important. We at Blend, we work with usually people that live in market. After COVID, people work remotely and they travel, but these people are from the country that we are targeting for our clients. And I believe it's important for everyone.
Thanks very much. Final question then, and just to let you know, I've moved the slide to some of Blend's fantastic localization content. So do scan those QR codes and check out the content there. But final question for Hilla, and then we're going to broaden it to the whole panel. So obviously, whenever a client uses an LSP, they're putting a huge amount of trust into you, and I guess the reason that they are is because often the reason they're doing it is because if you're translating into whatever it is, Japanese, they might not have somebody who speaks Japanese to verify that the translation is great. How do you what do you recommend that clients do to feel like they can put their trust in an LSP and be confident of the quality of the translation they're getting?
Right. So many times the clients that work with us, they usually, if they enter a market, they will have some people on the ground, which is very, very helpful, to verify and make sure they can review some of the content. It's not their job to review translations or do proofreading, but it's helpful to have people in market to help, assess the accuracy of translation. But if they don't have anyone on ground, I think it's important to work with the vendor or vendors that have the trust that you can put in them, and also the right talent. So as I said, having multiple professionals go through the content, QAing, editing after the translation, going through some proofreading and editing. But I think the most important thing here is the communication with the client in the brief phase, like providing the most detailed brief with the guidelines and the tone of voice and style that you're expecting to receive, and even some references, other content that you already have in place or from other brands that you really like. So the more detailed the brief will be. I also recommend building a glossary or a term base before starting the localization process, so you can really make sure you have the accurate translation of the key words or the key terms that the business is using. This will help to ensure that the translation is as coherent and as consistent and as accurate as possible.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, it's time to do the actual alignment and get into Q&A. I've just got a small number of notices to get through. I'm going to get through them as quickly as I can because I'm really keen to ask some questions to our panelists. First one, and maybe the most important, our next alignment is in just 2 weeks' time. So we've got actually Natalie Kelly in for this one. So Natalie Kelly is the author of Take Your Company Global, and she is the Chief Growth Officer now of Rebrandly. She just moved. She used to be the VP of Internationalization at HubSpot. I first became aware of Natalie because one of our previous webinar guests mentioned her and talked about how useful she had been to him in HubSpot in taking the product global. So she's an incredible level of expertise. We're going to have her because we want to hear as much of her as possible. We're just going to have one other speaker paired with her. So do register for that. It's going to be 30 minutes earlier than this webinar for various dull reasons, but on the 4th of October. So whatever time it is for you, or what it was for you when this webinar started 40 minutes ago, it's going to be 30 minutes earlier than that. So here in the UK, it's going to start at 4:30 p.m. Do come along. Really, really excited for it. Second, we've got a couple of bits of localization content to share with you if your appetite has not yet been sated for localization content. So first of all, if you want some content drip fed to you from all of our greatest hits, includes all of the brands that you can see on the screen now, interviews, snippets from the alignment episodes, and other things that we've done. Would be really excited to share it with you. So please do consider signing up to receive our emails. We've recently, one of the big pieces of content that we've been doing is the 2023 State of Localization Quality Report. It's so interesting. We surveyed 150 localization professionals about various different things that encouraged localization quality for them. One of the biggest findings there is that businesses are localizing in the dark, so they're not using enough data to help encourage their localization to be as good as it can possibly be. I think that my colleague is just posting it in the chat right now, or should be. Because we've not got a link on screen, but you can access it via the chat. And finally, you can watch previous webinars of the alignment online. That will be posted in the chat as well. And then 2 commercial notices, then we will get right to it. So first of all, Blend is offering a $75 gift coupon to get started with. So that's really exciting. It's only available to people who have attended this webinar. Do sign up. We'll post the link in the chat as well, and you can get started using Blend straight away with a $75 discount. And finally, the global app testing offer. So we are offering a free functional user insight localization audit from some professional testers in 3 of your chosen markets. So what that means is we just let our testers loose. We suggest the kind of issues that they'll be looking for, and they will come back to you with actionable things you can be doing to improve the product quality and global experience of your users tomorrow. So do sign up to that. That'll be in the chat as well. And that, I think, finally is the end of the notices. So I can stop sharing my screen and I can start asking the panel some questions. Thank you for bearing with me through that. So I've got loads of questions here, and I know that there's a couple have been answered. We've collected some on the entry form when people first signed up to this. I think my first big question is, how do you decide what data, what user research activities to prioritize? There's so many things you could do to collect data. Can anybody here comment on what actually leads that makes them think that's something that we should be prioritizing, an activity we should be prioritizing to collect data? No, I can't tempt anybody to comment on that one.
I mean, the obvious one, right, is return on investment, right? How much are we spending in the localization department versus how much our products and services are making? That's something that always came up when I was at Oracle or Hyperion before Oracle bought us. I think that's the basic one. It's gotten so sophisticated now. I'm not into it. I'll be honest. You know, I did an ROI exercise at Subway and it was insane. It was silly because, you know, what we spend, I took Korean as an example. And I'm like, okay, so I know how much I spent on Korean localization in 1 year, and our sales were, you know, in the millions in Korea. So it's an exercise that I don't do anymore, but I know it's something that I did at previous jobs.
But Carrie, it's interesting to see how was the improvement if you did sell in Korea before localizing the app or offering it in English, and then seeing if localization really had an uplift.
We don't have a choice, right? So we don't. We have to localize in all the Asian languages. There's no question about But yeah, that's a good point. So maybe I could go back, you know, now that we've launched the app in all those different languages to see how much the uptick. I can measure the digital sales versus the in-store sales. So that's something I can go do. Good point.
I wonder then, so if we move on from that one, so I wonder whether anybody can share with us a direct way that a local user data collection effort has resulted in a direct change to their product, and what's an example of that they might like to share with us.
I think something that it's done, and I know some cases, and also we do something at Kin, is these focus groups where basically you are getting research and feedback from the final users. Examples of this are, for example, Uber, that they were putting the app, the taxis in red for China instead of the traditional colors like yellow in New York. So they were, based on the feedback they were getting from the users, that red in China is an important color. They were changing the UI. There was also another interesting case of Travelbird, which is an app on a website about traveling, that they changed the product for the German users because there was one user interface that basically you could search for a destination by number of hours. So you could say, I want to travel around 3 hours, 2 hours, 1 hour. It was not really working in Germany because there are no limit highways in many of the roads. So 3 hours for German is very different for 3 hours of Italian. So in the end, what they did is just change the hours for kilometers. And instead of putting 3 hours, they were putting, I'm traveling like 300 kilometers. And in the other countries, you could have the hours because that's more like the common. So that's something that it appeared after users group and getting feedback from the users. At King, we are also running tests and, for example, getting feedback of the look and feel of the characters for the different regions. And then you try to change the design of the character or the design of the live ops based on that feedback. So it's relevant to a local market. So if we have one campaign in the United States, you might to do something different in Europe because it's just different, right? So these are some of the examples that I've seen that you get the feedback, and then depending on how is this implemented, because that's another thing, then those changes are implemented by the product teams.
So a lot of what we've talked about is localization happening at the kind of end of the product process. One of the one of our audience members on the weigh-in form, they asked how to get your colleagues to think about building a product with global users in mind as early as possible. I wonder if anybody could speak to encouraging their colleagues in product and marketing to actually think about global users earlier in the process. I know that's something, Carrie, that you talked about a little bit in your speech, but can anybody comment on that one?
I mean, I can make another comment about it, and that is Subway has more restaurants in North America than we do in other countries. And so, and quite frankly, you know, our marketing is kind of targeted around that. It's unique. You can go to Vietnam and get a sandwich. You can go to all these different places and get something that you normally wouldn't find potentially. So that's why I think we keep it so North American centric. It makes it challenging for sure. But I think, you know, like I said, once Subway got aligned on, yeah, we're going to go with the North American names and naming conventions and things like that, we kind of figured out the rest. We can slowly, you know, change the name to whatever market we're going into, and it's going to make sense. It's going to resonate. But I did see it was, I think, Jamie's question of being brought in early. And believe it or not, we are brought in early, but it's like, here's the name, figure it out in the target markets.
And do you have any processes in place to check that it is being received well, that comes back to you, or is that something that the marketing team would handle?
Oh no, so it's a group effort. And especially in Canada, you know, Quebec, they bring us in immediately because they have to trademark the name. We've got to figure it out. What is it? And then trademark it in Canada. And, you know, and the same goes for the other countries as well. And we did, you know, for Finland, we brought in our franchisees, we brought in, you know, our business developers, the people that are figuring out where to put a restaurant in Finland. They are especially digital, Finland. So I think that's why we chose Finland as the first market in EMEA to start with. But yeah, we are brought into the process. I will say I didn't have anything to do with the naming convention of, you know, the 3 levels. I'm not sure I would have chosen the boss, but you know what? I'm not in marketing. So that clearly resonated in Finland. But yeah, we are brought in early.
And just sticking on this kind of theme of like communicating the data, I know Miguel talked loads about how to bring data to the C-suite to show the value of the work. Is that something that either of you at Slack or at Subway, have you been exercising those kind of principles? Are there ways that you've been taking data and kind of conveying it to leadership to show the value of localization? I mean, you said, Carrie, that it's something you have to do, but is there like you know, put the dashboard into the face of the commercial team?
It hasn't been required. I am in a very unique situation at Subway. I don't know if it's because I'm trusted or whatever. I'm never asked to, you know, reduce my budget or why are we spending all this money on this, that, and the other thing. It's like, I work with all of the departments, all the regions, and we come up with what we think we're going to do for the next year. I take this to, I don't even go through approvals. I just tell finance, this is our budget for next year. And they're like, okay. So I know this is very unique because, oh my gosh, at previous companies, it was all this back and forth of, well, you know, we're not doing so well in this country. Why are we localizing? You know, that type of thing. That is no longer a discussion, and it never has been at Subway.
There's one question I'm really curious about that we've got in the entry form, and I wonder. I don't think it'll be anybody that pertains directly to the companies we're in, but it's just a kind of a call for ideas. So some people or one person asked that in slightly smaller companies where they don't have the resources to do loads of research on their users around the world, what are some ways that they can get user data or user feedback loops going that are easy to set up, that are inexpensive, and that can help direct the needle of what kind of product actions they should be taking?
If I can try to take this one, Adam, I think companies can start. I think Miguel said it. Start by looking at your analytics data and looking at the data that is already available. Where are your audience coming? Where is it coming from? What countries are visiting your website? Who are your buyers? And then obviously some research about competitors and how does the market look like today? Is there room for a company or a service like the one you're offering? If it's too competitive, so what to do if it's not? So there is an opportunity how to stand out. And I think that doing this, leveraging Google and the other data sources that are out there to see what the competition looks like and what our audience or the client's audience looks like is a good start. Mm-hmm. And then obviously you can start by talking to people and doing what Rieko did. Maybe not to fly to Japan, but try to talk to friends, colleagues, leverage your network to see if people in country can share some of their insights with you. That's what I would do.
Very good. Can I persuade anybody else to come in on that one, or should we move on to the next question?
Actually, I have a little bit. So Slack used to be a very small company. And then from that time, we checked customer feedback from coming through the help center and then or UI. And then those customer feedback have a great insight. So we were checking that. And also Hira said, the data, user data and stuff, there will be some questions, like a product team is looking at the data and they see some trend in this country only, and why, and that will be a good opportunity, and that can maybe take into some form of maybe survey to the country, or using a tool and do the online user interview, so you can do, some sort of user research. Yeah, that's my take.
And is that how the kind of the agenda for the localization team would get set at Slack? You talked about product teams looking at data. Is that what ultimately decides the kind of localization that you do?
Yeah, many times it affects too. We build a great relationship with product team, and then they collect a lot of data, and then they cannot interpret why it's happening, and then they come to us, and then the first question could be, is the translation is incorrect on our payment page? And then we are like, I don't think so, but we can check that. And then we checked, actually it happened, and we checked the translation, there's no issue, and then, okay, there will be something. But for the American member, who grew up in American culture and mindset, this tendency is really, they cannot interpret how, why this thing is happening. Then we formed a online user interview, and it found out in Japan there was so many culturally there was a blocker, so it was not our product reason, so it's more like a cultural reason. I can talk about the specific user case, but it will take 20 minutes, so I will not go that far.
But that's the workflow then. So the product team, they go, there's something wrong with Japan, and then they would actually send the data collection element to you to actually fulfill and figure out, working backwards from a commercial issue.
Yeah.
Does that reflect the workflows that other people have in their businesses in terms of identifying identifying what kind of localization they should be doing?
Wait, is it question to me or that?
Oh, no. Is it to other people? I guess to Carrie and Miguel. I mean, Carrie said that the localization workflow is very much, you sort of decide at the beginning, it's related to the marketing team and going out like that and working forward through commercial cases rather than being reactive to data. Is that right?
It is. I was just going to say what made me think of this is, the menus, right? So when we go into another country, we absolutely tap into the local market and figure out what's going to work in that particular market. They're stuck with our BMT because that's the sandwich that stays the same across all the countries. But other than that, in Japan, we've got rice balls. In Korea, we've got a prawn avocado sandwich. It's whatever's going to, work in that particular country. So that's the ultimate localization.
I've just realized that I have forgotten to share the results of the poll. So just to kind of show everybody who is curious, the answer is that most people do feel as though when their team gathers learnings about users, they are used by the business, so that are successfully used. I wonder whether anybody would like to comment on that. Is that in line with what we would have expected the results to be? Or do we think that in general it would have been different to that? Most people are sort of broadly agreed, but not like aggressively agreed. General agreement, I'm sensing that it is sort of in line with what we expected. Okay, well, I'm aware that we've got just 1 minute left, and I don't want to take anybody's time for too long. I just would like to revisit. So I'm aware that this has been answered privately, but I'd love to just hear the answer or an answer kind of publicly to the whole webinar. One of our guests asked, what if you capture the data of localized users and that data shows low localized users numbers? How do you justify the importance of localization and your own role in the company if the metrics aren't good? How do you tell the story of where to go from there? Can I ask anybody to come in on that one? Final thought for the webinar?
Something that I was replying there is that one possibility is creating a tier of languages matrix or priority markets and focusing on those markets that might have more potential. Because we know that some markets will be more localization friendly than others due to the English proficiency. So we're going to start with those. And if one market is not as strong, we just say that. And we are just transparent. But yeah, I always recommend to, of course, being honest, but also being aware that there are markets that localization is usually very well received. I was mentioning that France, Italy, South America, Germany, Japan, those are countries that, generally speaking, A/B tests and things like this, they should speak well for localization. So, yeah.
You
Also
can
answer that. Yeah, go ahead, João.
You can always blame marketing, right? Or improve, or even initiate more marketing efforts, because it's not enough only to localize the content to succeed in a new market. So
that's very true, and that's usually one of the things I'm commenting in the game teams, that if we localize and we don't communicate how the players know that now we have the game in this language, particularly when you are in new languages. So if we localize now Candy Crush into Thai, but we don't make any communication in Thailand, how do we know? So it needs to be always that combination with marketing and localization and being together. So yeah, we need each other for sure.
Fantastic. You were about to jump in, Horatio. I'm aware that we're 1 minute over, so I'm gonna close the webinar immediately after your comment. But did you want to just finish your thought there?
20 seconds. Only wanted to agree with Miguel related to tiering the countries, and I think from my experience and working with a lot of clients, I saw that there is a trend in these countries that Miguel already mentioned in the comment. So basically, you need to focus on these countries where basically this is well received, like localization, and it's pretty important for these guys for the users from these countries to everything to be localized. So agree on that one.
Fantastic. Well, thank you everybody for joining. You can see that I've put on the screen the three free tests if you do want to use them. And a huge thank you to our speakers for talking to us today. We will be back on the 4th of October. We encourage you to come we'll tell you more about that one in unlocking your next million users. The answer to that is not blame marketing, but something else. So thanks very much for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Right, I'm going to end the webinar now. Thanks everybody for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.